Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. My name is Tilly, and today, again, we're talking about ADHD. As always, this channel is just kind of made up with whatever I'm going through at the moment, whatever is interesting to me. And so I wanted to tell you guys about this book that I've read, and it's called Your Brain is Not Broken by Dr. Tamara Rosier. And it's about strategies for managing your ADHD and symptoms that might come up at different points in your life. And I have a lot of thoughts. In particular, a really large chunk of the book focuses on emotions, and we're going to talk through that today, on how ADHD and emotions can kind of interact with each other. This is also one of the first books on ADHD that I've read that I felt like I actually related to. And that's primarily because I think that I mask a lot of my symptoms really well. And so on the surface, I'm sure my close friends would disagree, but on the surface, it seems as though I've got everything together, but inside I'm really struggling and it doesn't feel like that at all. And I do feel a lot of shame around the struggles that I have. So I've been looking for different ways to navigate my symptoms, find something that works for me. And so I stumbled upon this book and I read it. I'm going to talk about some of the takeaways I had, how I might use some of the strategies moving forward. And then I'd love to open up a discussion with you guys and see what you think. To start us off, I'm going to bring up a quote from the book that made me really emotional, and I think you guys might like it as well. My brain is not broken, it just works differently, and I'm still capable of learning skills and different ways of navigating the world around me. I feel like I'm gonna cry. That part really got me. And another reason I wanted to make this video is that even though it feels like it, we're not necessarily destined to be a certain way forever. And we don't have to stay stuck if we don't want to. And just a last final disclaimer is that I'm taking and talking about the parts of the books that resonated with me today. But if I'm saying anything that's not in line with your experience, I want you to know that that doesn't invalidate what you're going through, because ADHD can present differently for everybody. But your experience with ADHD, even if it's different to mine, it's still valid, and your feelings on it are still important and need to be felt. So like I said, this book really spends a large part discussing the emotional regulation that people with ADHD may feel, and how the ADHD experience for a lot of people is often synonymous with having really big feelings or really big emotions. Dr. Tamara describes ADHD brains as kind of like a light switch when it comes to what we feel. It's either on or it's off. Some examples of this might be getting frustrated really easily by minor inconveniences, or spending way too much time thinking about small issues. Or on the other side of that, spending no time thinking about certain issues. It might look like having difficulty calming yourself down, or even feeling wounded at even the most gentle of criticism. And in my experience before medication, all of those things are how I would describe myself. Even on medication, it's still not completely gone away. Something else that the book brings up is how big emotions can be used to motivate our behavior. So when we have big feelings like anger or anxiety, if we use those kind of feelings to motivate ourselves to do something, the book describes those as malicious motivators. So I want you guys to do a little exercise with me. I want you to think of something that you don't want to do because it's not fun or it's tedious. Even as I'm saying this, my body is like filling with inexplicable dread at the thought of doing anything that I don't want to do. I'm not even talking about a particular task at this point. My body is just preemptively saying no to whatever hypothetical task I'm making up. Bloody hell. But one example of what might happen when we have a boring task is that we might put it off. And we might put it off up until the point where it is absolutely necessary for it to get done. And our big feelings like anger or anxiety swoop in huge amounts. And that powers us through getting the task done. Does that sound familiar to any of you? In this case, anger or anxiety would act as one of those malicious motivators. And it can work pretty well all throughout my schooling career, even in my undergraduate degree or my postgraduate, my master's program. I can never remember studying for an exam until it was absolutely necessary for me to do that, or until the absolute last minute. My classmates would be working and preparing weeks in advance, and that would make me feel like I wasn't good enough. Because I wasn't studying, I was in my bed binging TV shows that I had seen a million times before. And it's not because I didn't want to do well. I had so much stress about failing, or about letting my parents or my teachers down, or about being embarrassed in front of my friends if they did better than me. But I couldn't get myself to study or to stop watching TV and just get up. But when my anxiety of all of those things and the fears, all of the doubt, reached an absolute boiling point, then I would spring into action and I could get it done. And I'm fortunate that I feel like I have an academically wired brain, so I do quite well in exams and things like that. And so none of my teachers really had any reason to suspect that I had ADHD. But people with ADHD can do well in school too. It just shouldn't have to be that hard. Using anxiety as a fuel to do things is not sustainable. And I can tell you from years of experience that it is certainly not enjoyable. No one should have to exist in a state of perpetual fear of failure or thinking that they're gonna mess up as a way to motivate themselves to do something, because that can drain your battery really quickly and it is exhausting. And it wasn't really until I was reading this book that I had the words to articulate that this is something that I've done my entire life. And like I said, because I did well in school, I never really attributed it to an ADHD thing. But that comes back to what I said in the beginning. ADHD looks different for everybody. It's not just a young boy who's the class clown and disrupting the class who is suffering with organization. It can also look like somebody who uses mass amounts of anxiety to motivate themselves to do something, even if that's doing the laundry or cleaning the dishes. And up until I had the diagnosis of ADHD, I didn't have the language, like I said, to understand that that's what I was doing. I just assumed that I was lazy or that it was a character fault of mine or a moral failing. And I assumed this even though I knew I really wanted to study and I wanted to do well. And I probably also assumed this because the language around ADHD in general, it's not really a deficit of attention, is it? And so I assumed it was a me problem, a lazy problem, a space cadet problem, because there were things that I was able to pay attention to. I just had to be really interested in them. And even though I did need anxiety, I didn't need anxiety for everything. And I don't know if that is gonna resonate with some of you guys, but I would love to know what you think. But now that I have the language to communicate that and I'm able to explain and be like, oh, okay, I can still do well in school and have ADHD. They're not mutually exclusive. It shouldn't have been that difficult for me to organize myself or to stay on top of things. And ADHD is the diagnosis that fits best for my brain. So it's great, we've established all of that. But now what do we do? Now we're coming back to the book. Sorry, that was a long tangent. Dr. Tamara Rosa brings up something called the Solvit Grid, and it made so many things click for me, so it's something I wanted to mention. But it's all connected to our emotions. Dr. Rosa here says that ADHD brains split up activities into two main categories: things that are fun and that we find entertaining, and things that are not fun and that we find boring. Fun, novel, or shiny activities captivate our interest, and they hijack our motivation like nothing else. Fun tasks bring us happiness, and the stimulation from that makes us feel good, and our brains are always chasing that thing that's stimulating or exciting. So what do we do when we have to do things that we don't like? Well, that need for stimulation can apply to the negative stimulation as well. Anything that sparks up enough of an emotional response or creates enough stimulation gets our attention, and then we can do it. So for me, it was studying for exams for subjects that I don't like. That falls into the not fun category. So my brain used the malicious motivator of anxiety to get me to care about it and to get me to do it, and it worked. But like I said, that wasn't without cost to my self-esteem, to my self-worth, to my energy. It was exhausting. So Dr. Rozier created the Solvit Grid to explicitly look at how our motivation and emotions intertwine. And once we know that, hopefully it'll help us manage ourselves a little bit better. So we have 4 different quadrants of the Solvit Grid. We have the red, yellow, green, and the blue. The red quadrant includes tasks and activities that we do not find fun, but they are emotionally stimulating. The yellow quadrant are typical adulting things, or they're things that make up our daily life, like chores or housework, or just general life or business maintenance. They're not really fun, and they're not particularly emotionally stimulating. Yellow is the yuck quadrant. Blech. Yellow activities for me include things like folding laundry or studying. But yellow tasks can turn into red tasks, which is the kicker. Just look at my example of studying that I gave you earlier. Had I started weeks before, I could have done little bits of studying a day, and then it would have stayed a yellow task. So I wasn't super interested in it, and it wasn't really creating much of an emotional reaction. But I left it long enough, it was still boring, but now there was gonna be a massive cost to me if I didn't do it. So naturally, it was way more emotionally stimulating. It became a red task and I was able to get it done. Moving on to the other side of the grid, we have got the blue quadrant, and that's where we go when we're avoiding yellow or red tasks. The blue quadrant activities are things that are not emotionally stimulating, but they are pretty fun. So for me, the activities that I picked out were things like social media, playing Sudoku on my phone, or watching reality TV, although I do get really passionate about my reality TV, so I don't know. We're going for Goldilocks in the blue zone. If we have too little time on our blue zone activities, then we're going to be anxious for rest and for play. But with too much time in the blue zone, then that makes us resistant to activities that we need to get done, or resistant to starting something else. And I feel that. I feel like I could recharge quite calmly by playing Sudoku on my phone. And then if I'm not careful, I'll spend hours there and then I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm not doing anything else. And then I feel like crap. So it definitely does deplete my battery. And the final quadrant that we have in the Solvit Grid is the Green Quadrant. This is where our activities are emotionally stimulating and they're fun. According to Dr. Rosier, the Green Quadrant gives us space to build our relationships, reflect on personal growth, be creative, and enjoy our lives. It often refocuses our goals and our purpose, and it reminds us of what is important. The green zone is where ADHDers would love to be forever and ever 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 and ever. For me, the green zone is something like reading a book or going for a walk or spending time with my friends, getting a coffee, going for breakfast, maybe even going to the gym. But the kicker is with the green zone, a lot of us don't let ourselves enjoy it because we don't feel like we deserve it, but we need it. The green zone is truly where our batteries recharge. And I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of feeling like this. If I feel like I haven't been my most productive self, then why should I be able to do something that's going to take care of myself and regenerate my batteries? Why would I do something that's going to relax me? And that does sound ridiculous when I say it out loud, because obviously if I've not been getting the things I need to done, then my battery is probably already pretty depleted. But now that we understand the zones and we understand what kind of activities might be in there, we can think about how it affects our energy. And I've already mentioned it briefly, but that green zone, that gives us energy. The blue zone kind of has the ability to go either way. It might help us gain energy or might help us lose it. But on the other hand, when I think about yellow tasks like housework, I feel as though it will drain my battery. And you might feel like that too. Every morning when I wake up and I look at the dishwasher, I feel as though I am going to be so depleted by putting those dishes away. So I might delay it. But then somebody might be coming over to my house and all of a sudden my yellow task is now turning into a red task because now I have a deadline and now somebody's going to see the state of our house. And now my once not emotionally stimulating tasks are taking a really high emotional toll and they're still not fun. They've moved into that red quadrant and now I'm panicked and stressed and I'm overwhelmed. And so even though I feel like it would take up more of my energy by just doing those dishes, by only addressing tasks once they're in that red zone, that is way more costly to my energy and it's way more detrimental to my quality of life. And I think somewhere inside me I know that. So what do we do with that? Well, tip number one is that we have to challenge our beliefs. We do this by trying to become aware of what level our battery is actually at the moment. And then after we do a task, what level is our battery at now? So again, thinking of unpacking the dishwasher fills me with dread. But in reality, it doesn't take that long and I feel pretty fine afterwards. So even though my energy's at an 8 to start, I think doing the dishes will put my energy down at a 4. It actually stays around a 7 or an 8. So it's not that bad. Another tip is to time yourself doing a yellow task. So a common symptom of ADHD is time blindness. So either vastly overestimating or underestimating the amount of time that something will take. And this can affect our beliefs about the task. I did this exercise the other day, again with my delightful dishwasher. Before I unloaded the dishes, I was like, okay, this is probably gonna take me like 15 minutes and it's gonna leave my energy at about a 4 afterwards. Not even 5 minutes later, I was done. And my energy, like I said, not really affected. So truly, that wasn't as bad as I thought. So timing yourself doing tasks can actually be a really helpful way to help you challenge some of those false beliefs that you may have in regards to yellow tasks. But timing yourself can also be used to give yourself an understanding that yellow tasks don't have to last forever. If you set yourself a timer for 20 minutes to get some of your admin work done and you allow yourself to stop and rest after that, then you know that the yellow task can only take so long. And that timing technique can be really useful when we're applying it to our blue zone activities as well. So if I'm using Sudoku to unwind, but I know that playing those kind of mindless games on my phone has the potential to make me less likely to want to do something in the future, then I need to time myself and set a cap for the amount of time spent on that activity in that zone. However long I need to reach that Goldilocks point of just right. not too long and not too little. Doing this, we're better able to manage our energy reserves, but we're also setting boundaries with ourselves, which is another really helpful thing that can help us to build self-esteem because we're trusting ourselves. We're learning our limits, we're learning our own capacities, we're learning how our brain works. And I don't know about you, but that makes me feel proud of myself, and that makes me feel like I trust myself. I have my best interests at heart, which sounds silly, but that's not something that I always do. That in turn combats that low self-esteem and that shame that I feel about myself when I can't get myself to do something. Shame can also be a really powerful malicious motivator, and for me that's definitely a pesky one that I need to watch out for. Now, I definitely think that the Solvit Grid can be a really great way of helping us become more aware of our patterns, helping us become more aware of how our energy is spent, or what we can do to replete or deplete our energy. I mean, I worked through it here myself. And I do think the Solvit Grid can be a really great way to pick up patterns when we're navigating our emotions and learning our capacities. And we're looking at how our emotions interact with the tasks that we do. But it's really important that we approach this in an inquisitorial, observer perspective. This is something that I have to remember too. We're doing this to learn about ourselves and to help ourselves because we're not stuck and our brain is not broken. It just works slightly differently. But hopefully all of those techniques can make us a little bit more aware of our brain. And I think that's honestly the best starting point. You could use all of the techniques in the world. You could have all of the best organizational diaries or whatever, as I'm sure so many of us with ADHD have been through countless planners and things. But if we're not aware of our patterns or how we use our emotions or when we feel them, then I'm not sure how much good they'll do. So the grid is something that I'm trying to implement with tasks in my life moving forward. I've been trying it out for the last week and I think it has helped. Like, I'm making a conscious effort to try and do more green zone activities because I know that that's how my brain recharges. It doesn't matter how much I've done that day. I'm not going to approach the next day being healthy and recharged if I don't allow myself time to recharge. It's a learning process. I hope you guys found this interesting. I know it was a little bit long, but I'm just kind of exploring things and exploring myself, and I want you guys to do that as well, and hopefully something in here helps you along that journey. If you do get a chance, I highly recommend that you read Your Brain Is Not Broken. I really enjoyed it, and if you have read it, I'd love to know what you think. Did you agree with all of it? Did you agree with none of it? What did you find helpful? What did you not find helpful? These are some bits that resonated with me that I thought might help me, and so that's why I wanted to make this video. Be kind to yourselves, guys, and I'm really proud of you all, and I'm proud of me too. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see you next time.